Hello all, it is Blueies and Shoeies Rugby World Cup edition. It's my big pal, Dwight Eaglehoff. How are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. We're at the big dance now. I'm pumped. This is going to be good.
And there were two, as you said. And before we kick off, mate, anyone watching on the Mighty YouTube, finally, after hours and hours on online, the Mighty Springbok jersey was found. It just shows you, mate, the amount of support, considering they're all sold out
All over the
basically at one
world.
stage. So there's been some random butcher in Melbourne that obviously is South African that was selling them. So happy days. Hopefully
Yeah,
that shirt can, at least under my ownership, have a 100% record. And we'll be very happy men next week. But what we'll do for anyone listening, and thanks for everyone tuning in, is we'll discuss each of the semi-finals. Obviously, two very different games. I think the Kiwi game, the New Zealand All Blacks game was fairly routine, so we'll be probably fairly brief for that. Whilst the South African game was not maybe the most attractive rugby, it certainly was a spectacle in the end. So there'll be a few more talking points there. We'll go through our potential thoughts on guys that may come in or out of the teams. And then sort of, I guess, looking at potentially some key game plans or things to look out for from each team and where we think the score will be. Without much ado, let's get straight into it, mate. The Kiwis, All Blacks versus the RGs. I dare say, mate, I didn't keep a very close eye on this one after seeing what was happening early doors. So unfortunately, I don't know whether it was the lack of Pablo Montero and the like, but that physicality that we spoke about last week and the ability to sort of make the game a little bit more messy and disrupt the sort of Kiwis, just never
Mm.
really came to fruition, mate.
No, that's exactly it. I think I even sent you a text said bother watching it. It was a bit of a glorified training run without being disrespectful to Argentina.
100%.
They for the first 6 minutes they were in the game. They were there, like we said. The most important thing, they had to be there emotionally, and they were
Yeah.
there for 6 minutes. Then it just you know the
I
the
just
All
can't do
Blacks
it anymore.
do.
I've had
Yeah,
enough.
yeah, I'm done. Yeah. And that the All Blacks do what the All Blacks do. They absorb the pressure and then they just cut you to pieces. But the one thing when you play the All Blacks is you can't allow them to get quick ball.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Argentina let them get that quick ball, and the scoreline. I don't even think, as much as it was 44-6, I don't think it even kind of that showed the dominance. But it's quite. That's the first time since 1995 a team scored more than four tries in a semi final.
Yeah.
So disappointing. But it's left a few question marks, if I'm honest, because the All Blacks, they had France, and that was 6 weeks ago now, and that was a tough game. And then they had one got tested once. Italy was decidedly weak against them, and they haven't really been tested. So I don't know if they got out of that game what they would have wanted, but listen, they got no injuries, managed the clock, managed the minutes, and they'll be full of confidence.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I think that stat
yeah.
that you touched on there, the four tries, I mean, I think that could
Mhm.
really ultimately come down to the nature of this draw being so lopsided, right? So you're almost
Yeah,
playing your quarterfinal at semi-final if you got through
the
the
wrong way
tough
around.
semi
Yeah,
for both South Africa and New Zealand, and that hence the sort of potentially on that sort of four try scenario where usually we're seeing the South Africans play the French and Kiwis play the Irish at that semi-final stage, is what I guess everyone would have potentially expected had the draw evened out or been drawn closer towards the tournament. But That's life, mate. Just disappointing
That's
because
what
I think the Aussies play with so much passion, don't they? And they're
yeah.
very patriotic. They're what South Americans, Latinos, mate. That sort of
Mm.
Latinos sort of those vibes just weren't there, mate. And I think they've sort of lacked that for most of the tournament, and just about had enough to get past Wales.
That's it, and I think if anything, maybe this week's their week playing that bronze medal match, third, fourth playoff, and that's how they'll go. But they have been disappointing as much as they made the semi-finals. You've touched on it there. That reflects more the draw rather than the actual performance. And I'm sure they will be disappointed. They are proud people. But listen, they're still in the competition for one more week, and good luck to them this week. But yeah, unfortunately, they didn't really probably test the All Blacks as much as they wanted. And they let them run a bit rampant. I mean, the All Blacks beat 51 defenders. I can tell you what, that's not going to happen this weekend.
Fingers crossed. I mean, talking about star performers, mate. I know you touched on. I think Talia was probably 13 of those sort of 50 beaten, but I think that the man of the hour, Will Jordan, some sensational tries. I mean that
Mate,
that one where it looked like he was almost a bit of football about it, where he almost looked like he was sort of going down the left, down to the sort of left part of the touchline or the try line, and I don't know if he had a supporting player, and he almost sort of dinked it a little bit straight or right. It looked purposeful, and then he just picked it up. Obviously, ball bounced lovely for him, but yeah. Sexy try, mate.
That's it. No, and listen, I've always said he's the new Ben from accounts. He just does basics incredibly well, and he scores a lot of tries, a lot of points. I found it really interesting though. Hey, I mean, he's tied the record with all these great wingers. He's a lot younger than all of them were, Lomu and Habana and stuff. But he could have set the record, and Richie Mo'unga could have gifted it to him. And just said,
loved it,
night, mate. Oh,
did you see his comments? He's like, obviously, you expect him to come out really apologetic and the like, especially considering I don't know if he scored the try, but he basically said, he's a young guy. I want to keep his feet on the ground. Yeah, it's good. Good little quip from Richie. But the one I know we've spoken about, me and you, about the fact that he's similar to Ben Smith with the way he's got that sort of really good feet. But I think Danny Cipriani made an interesting one where he compared him to sort of a modern day Christian Cullen, which I thought was also again quite interesting. I think he's probably got a little bit more X factor than Ben Smith, albeit similar with that sort of feet. But again,
I heard Justin Marshall. Yeah, I heard Justin Marshall talking about him today, and Marshall also said he's very much like Cullen. He said he's got the thing is because and to be fair, Cheslin Colby's a bit the same but different. Is when you use your agility, so when you stop putting the steps on or swerving, changing direction, you generally actually slow down a bit. You lose a bit of momentum. But they said Cullen is like Will Jordan is he just doesn't. Jason Robinson was another one who used to be the same.
Jesus.
They'll put footwork on you, but it doesn't stop their momentum.
Sidestep you in a phone booth, right?
Yeah, exactly. So no, that or there. Other players though, I guess that for the All Blacks, it's always hard to look past Ardie Savea. The man is just is the heartbeat and dare I say the soul of this All Black team. He's just the amount of work he gets through and the way he wants to dominate the work he does is beyond admirable. He's got over a 50% gain line carry stat, which is pretty big because he's not a big guy, especially by loose forward standards. But he's kind of mindset orientated, and you can see it in the way he
keeps
performs.
Those legs pumping.
Yeah, and he was busy again against Argentina. Obviously, a few. I personally, I thought both Sam Cade and Frizzell went missing. I mean, Frizzell got some tries, but it was all other guys' work. But really, it's hard to look past Mark Talia, mate. He was probably the best player in Super Rugby this year for people who watch Super Rugby. His ability to beat the first defender every single time is unbelievable. But the second part of it is how he goes and looks for work. The pick and goes between the forwards, and like guys look like they've got him, and he just gets rid of them. It's remarkable how strong he is, and how much work he goes through. So no, a lot of them did well. But also, I think before we were online, I said I personally thought quite a few of the All Blacks actually went a bit missing during the whole 80 minutes. Like
Yeah,
they might have played in little short bursts, but it's going to be interesting because in a final, you've got to be on. It's got to be an arm wrestle. Finals always are arm wrestles, and you got to be on for the whole 80
full
minutes.
80. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Well, hopefully it's 80
something
minutes. You never know.
something we'll probably talk about a little bit later when we speak about potential lineups. But interestingly, in the quarterfinals, they had Retallick start with Barrett, and then
Yeah,
Whitelock came off the bench and obviously had the steal at the end. And I think Whitelock started this time round. So it
yep,
seems like they're trying to, I wouldn't call it quite the sort of same as the bomb squad scenario, but they're obviously trying to leave a little bit of firepower there on the bench. And in particularly Barrett's being the younger of the three. He's
yep,
the sort of focal point and probably been one of their best players over the last 18 months, despite
yep.
his tendency to have make a stupid mistake and get himself a yellow card.
Well, I'll tell you what spoke volumes, and the All Black coaches spoke around it, but he got his fourth 10-minute bin, and that was silly. Like, don't get me wrong, that was just silly, and it's a big problem for him as far as I'm concerned, because he's constantly giving away penalties and cards. But the fact that they didn't put him back on the field spoke a lot. Like, they always said, oh, we didn't want to risk it or whatever, but it's like, you telling me you don't have enough faith that that guy knows he's got a final next week and he might not give away another penalty or another yellow card. It says, for me, it said a lot about what the coaches actually think of him. But listen, he's key in their pack. He's going to keep them working. I suspect Retallick will start this week, and
Yeah,
Whitelock will go back to the bench. The
yeah,
reason is there hasn't been much talk of it at the World Cup. There was a lot of a talk of it during Super Rugby, and Sam Whitelock actually played in the Super Rugby final, even though he wasn't cleared to by the All Black medical staff. They actually didn't want him to play. He is nursing an Achilles that is not good, and so it's all just workload for him. So that's probably what they're monitoring. The second thing is worth touching on with Retallick is during when we gave him an absolute toweling in Twickenham, he wasn't playing. And a lot in the last kind of 5 years, a lot of the big losses or surprise losses the All Blacks had, Retallick either wasn't playing or wasn't at his best. Like when Ireland knocked them over last year, he had just come back from Japan and he wasn't sharp. He's just so important in their team, especially on defence. He gets through so much work, and it's not sometimes the physical tackling he's doing or rucks he's hitting, but on defence, the amount of times he gets into, he does what the fold in defence. So he'll move across a ruck to fill up a defensive line and do all these things. He's really remarkable at it. So I suspect they'll start him and leave him out there for as long as they feel comfortable. And then Whitelock will probably close it. Or they might bring Whitelock and him on and Barrett goes to 6. And then they'll take Frizzell off. Coming back to your comment about the bomb squad, I mean, Jason Ryan's a great coach, got a lot of time, a lot of respect for him. And, he somehow thinks they can take the gas out of it. I don't think that's necessarily going to be as easy as that. But listen, it's hard to pick how this game's going to go. So I'll leave it for the All Blacks to try take the gas out the bomb squad.
yeah. I mean, just touching on Retallick, man, I just think he's also just had more physical presence. He gets
Mm.
through. In terms of work rate, his carries and the like. He's just a bit more physically powerful. He's got a little bit of an offload in him and the like. So I think but they're both at towards the end of their careers, right? I mean, Whitelock's the first guy that could win 3 World Cups. So
No, yeah,
yeah, it's a
that's
huge,
unbelievable.
potentially a huge achievement, on the cards there. So yeah, look, I dare say he's probably better to come in on the last 20, Whitelock, just because I think Retallick's got that little extra edge from a physicality point of view. But as you pinpointed, they could also pull off Frizzell and move Barrett to 6. So it should be interesting,
6.
mate. Time will tell. But
Yep.
any final points from your end, mate, on that game, or should we move swiftly on to Springboks?
Only one other question. So I've said maybe we're not sure where the All Blacks are in terms of being tested. Yeah, the other thing is their discipline still hasn't been great, even though it's an average Argentinian team. They gave away, a few unnecessary penalties as far as I'm concerned, and we've spoken a lot about that yellow card. But yeah, they're just silly penalties. And against South Africa, where they can either put it over the poles or put it into the corner, I think that's just the one part that from that game that I think the All Blacks might need to sharpen up this week. But no, let's move on. The one that was a hard watch but thrilling nonetheless.
Absolutely, mate. I mean, as they say, South Africa, England was a game of niches, in reference to Ox niche. And another win by South Africa by Dupont, as another one would say. So we'll try use all the gags tonight.
I'm about to say, mate, jeez, you're bringing out all the dad jokes. Yeah, Jesus. But it was true.
Traditional game, mate. I mean, very old school. England were very one-dimensional, albeit the dimension was played to nearly played to perfection in a sense that kicking game was very strong, and I think the forward pack, I was surprised to see. I don't know too much about him beforehand, but I thought the lock Martin had a big game. Itoje looked like 2019, 2020 Itoje. I don't think he's looked like that for many a year. And then, if we think about how Marler and Coles got scrummed off their feet in 2019 in the final, for those boys, I thought they really fronted up well in that first half, first 50, 60 minutes actually. And maybe debatable whether they should have been pulled off in the end, because I guess we saw what happened once Ox came in, and South Africa obviously traded a beast for an Ox, but we seem to have fared fairly well, mate. But what are your thoughts?
Well, first off, I'm really glad we chatted up Ox last week, because he delivered the goods and some superb performance. You usually expect kind of your loose forwards or someone to come on and kind of what you call a momentum swinger or change, but I thought he made a substantial contribution. So, but no, listen, going back to it, I started seeing that weather. When I was watching here, it was Sunday morning, and I thought, because the one thing in rugby, weather is the great equaliser, and I don't think that you saw how bad the conditions actually were on TV, but you saw it with some of the handling and everything else. I mean, like as I said to you, Jamie George had that one line-out throw. I've seen dead fish swim better upstream.
There we go, mate. Trying to do a quick pass, and then also we saw South Africa had advantage off the back of a scrum, and Pollard trying to throw the big ball and just came straight out the fingers. Funnily enough, that led to the line kick and then the line-out for the try. So it was actually probably a good thing that we didn't get
exactly
further advantage there, because we're not sure where that score would have gone. But for me, mate, I guess the big concern for us after, when I say us, the Boks coming into the semis, was that game against France was one of the most, as my mate kept laughing about, I said most intense, I think about 15 times last week, but it was one of the most intense games that I've ever seen against the French last week, and it was just whether we were going to be able to back it up. And when you look at our stalwart, our enforcer, but a brilliant rugby player, not only the enforcer, and Eben Etzebeth just looked a shadow of himself that he did against France, and was potentially the best player in the park against France. He looked nowhere.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'd read an article this week that said that was his worst performance in the 118 games he's played for the Bokke. And listen, it's hard to argue that, if I'm being honest. There's a clip had come out earlier in the week. Jaco Paper had come down to the Springbok training, and you saw Eben spending a lot of time with him, talking about kind of the onside and trying to go for a charge down and a few things. And truth be told, that's looked like all he was trying to do the whole game was just charge down a box kick. He didn't really do anything else. I mean, he had the one thing, I think also he got a bit despondent when it happened, but it was 100% the right call. Again, we spoke about it last week. He doesn't get the credit for his knowledge of the rules. But there was one quite early in the game where England built their magnificent caterpillar with half their team, and
He's got his hands on the ball.
Well, no, he had his hands on the ground, and he had all four. And that actually means you're not bound, you're not part of the ruck. And I shouted it straight away. And but O'Keefe got it wrong. And on he goes. But listen, coming back to it, I mean, even it wasn't his best test match, but hopefully that bodes well for this week. But I mean,
the big call, listen, Libbok coming off early.
Ruthless. But right, and listen, Moni Libbok. People think, oh, you're going to damage a young player, or you're going to do this or whatever. Listen, mate, that guy's moved around unions. He's tough stuff. If you think that's going to get him down, it won't. But there'll be good learnings from him. I think they just the part that undone him is he had 2 or 3 really bad kicks in a row.
Especially, I think off the left foot. Where, it's brilliant that he's dual footed, and that's good. But he did. It just didn't come off, and we were. He's great, obviously. Well, I think just Pollard's slightly better game manager, and look, his experience tells that, and especially given we were losing the forward battle. Just bringing Pollard on just to manage that a little bit better.
In those conditions, we were the game was never going to play to Moni Libbok's strengths. So fair call, and take him off. But listen, without talking too much about the negatives and everything, the one thing, and there's been a lot of afters, and I'll get into it now, but you got to doff your hat to England. They clearly had a plan. They believed in their plan, and they stuck to their plan. I touched on it last week, though. I said, England are really good at playing a specific type of rugby. Their problem is South Africa can play it better than them. Well, shit, for 70 minutes, they outplayed South Africa that game. Their kicking was accurate. It was superb. Their chases were there. Listen, they had a few quirks, and it's not the way... I understand why some people don't like seeing the game played that way. But listen, when you're playing within yourself and you've got a limited skill set or a limited time together... I thought they did well with what they were doing. I guess their problem was they played not to lose. They didn't play to win. They just played not to lose. And ultimately, I always knew South Africa were going to win. Like, it was quite weird. I was quite calm as much as it was a stressful situation. That Owen Farrell drop goal maybe put the blood pressure up a bit when he did. But like I kept saying, to my wife was, we just need to get in front. Once we're in front, they can't play catch up, and that's what happened. And the telling stat was, it's the first time ever in the whole World Cup a team hasn't had a single line break, and England didn't have a single line break against South Africa for the 80 minutes. They never looked
like scoring, mate. I think I mentioned that sort of stat here. That Elliot Daly on the wing, 3 passes made, 0 carries, which obviously then means 0 line breaks and 0 defenders beaten. But look, and he had a good game because obviously his work was to charge down the kicks, pressurise the catcher, and that type of thing. But it's so sort of one-dimensional, something that South Africa, off the back of not playing for 2 years post World Cup and COVID, probably implemented a lot against the Lions and were heavily criticised. But now England are saying gallant losers. They love a gallant loser, England, to their credit.
The English are terrible
love it.
Celebrating mediocrity. I'll say that.
I'll
get in trouble for a few things, but yeah. But listen, the one thing they did try to do is they try to test my stat that I've been pushing for the last few weeks, which is that the team that has the most kicks from hand generally wins. Well, England had a whopping 41 kicks out of hand.
It's unbelievable.
Amazing. They regathered 11 of them, and that's something to touch on when we talk about the final. But they definitely dominated the airspace against South Africa. So that was there. But the interesting thing, you spoke about Marler and Dan Cole.
Dan Coles, yeah.
This was some of their retribution. The Skulk Brits, if I encourage anyone to go have a listen to him talking about it, or there's an article you can read, and he speaks about the bomb squad and how the Springbok teams develop. But he talks about the relationships you have to have as a scrum and as a front row, and how powerful those actually are. And you saw it. They're two good mates. They get on well off the field, and you saw it. But really interesting thing was that England gave away 4 scrum penalties. The only time in the last few years they've given away 4 or more scrum penalties was that 2011 final.
90.
And so they've just giving away. That as I said, you nailed it, mate. We gave away a beast, but we got an ox, and he did it. And I'll talk about that last one. There's been a lot of controversy, and a couple of things I just want to say. Like, the English, dare I say, they've been a bit salty. They're upset. I think they thought they really had a chance to win, and they proved they did. But ultimately, you've got to give credit to the Boks. They found a way to win, and that's what you have to love with this team. I mean, even if they won the game in the last 10 minutes, but even in the last 10 minutes, England had 73% territory. South Africa had 27% territory, and they found a way to win. So I can understand why the English are a bit upset, but there's been a lot going on. South Africa don't respect us and a few other things. And I mean, listen, what happened after the final whistle with Danny Keane, it's not on. It's just
look, Rico Ioane went to the Irish fans and gave the ear behind the ear, and you're supposed to have that no dickhead policy over there. I don't like that. I've got no time for Villy doing that. Albeit, don't get me wrong, the only sort of pushback I'd say to that in his defence or South Africa's defence is, after any penalty win or knock on from South Africa, Itoje et al. were screaming in their faces about, cheering about every. So look, it winds you up. But I just don't like it. Once you win, mate, then the dust is settled. If you want to have a word with someone, have a word with someone. But the running around someone's face, I've got no time for. Especially Villy. I mean, he shouldn't be doing this. He didn't.
No, everyone who knows me or is on my group chats knows my thoughts on Villy. But the one thing I thought I'd just chat about, and it's a bit technical and a bit hard to explain on a podcast, but I think it's good. Like that last scrum penalty. There's been a lot of coverage that, like, you saw the picture where Vincent Koch is like, perpendicular. It's like 90 degrees almost,
Listen,
mate, anyone who has ever played in the front row or coached a front row knows that no tight end prop ever wants to be in that position, because can you imagine putting your ribs against 900 kilos pushing you? Like, it's gonna do some damage. So there's that. The second thing was what people don't understand.
But the first infringement had already happened at that point, right?
It had. No, but also the Fijian coach, Simon Rawali, actually did a really good piece on this. Ellis Genge actually hides his shoulder and he tucks it under his hooker. And the reason he's doing that is he's given himself an angle to go through. And what's really interesting, and I suspect what's happened, I mean, you won't hear it just yet, but you might hear it in time. People don't know this, but before a test match, each team gets a sit-down session with the referee for the test match.
Yeah.
I suspect the Springboks had picked this up. They saw what Ellis Genge does. They painted that picture. They explained it to Ben O'Keefe, and he did it. He dropped the knee, gave himself the angle, and he went in trying to be clever, and he shouldn't have. And Ben O'Keefe picked up straight away. And the telling thing was Ellis Genge looked up, he looked at him, he heard exactly what he said, and he turned and he walked. And he knew he got done.
Yeah.
So, but the thing that I loved out of that whole moment, as much as I can talk about statistics, South Africa won the statistic of the day, which was the scoreboard. And mate, Andre Pollard just put that ball down, looked at it, no shake, no wiggle, no look at the cock, mate, and he gunned that thing dead straight.
Just arse through his veins, But I mean, a quick one on that. I mean, look, I'm no scrum expert, but again, he did make the first infringement, and then the second point is Kitchoff did the first half and got penalised for exactly the same thing. So, again, dropped his knee to the ground, hit the ground. So that's immediately a penalty, because what you're doing is then you're lowering yourself to then push back up against, and your job within that scrum is to maintain the level. Yeah, keep it stable. So, look, I don't think that's too bad from a couple of amateurs explaining exactly why. But what we'll conclude from that is the English are whingers. They played great, but they're becoming
great semi-finalists.
Ultimately, you've got to win. Otherwise, you go home with the gravy. So. We've got Wayne Barnes this weekend, mate. A quick word on Wayne before we get going. I think this is his final game. Brilliant career.
Brilliant career. Obviously tarnished in 07. with the All Black France quarterfinal. I'm very happy he's the referee. If you had asked me before the World Cup who would I want to be the referee, would have been him or Jaco Paper. I think he is the best ref in the world. He communicates well. He's pretty objective. But he uses his whistle. He's not like a few of these other coaches where they try to coach you and then use the whistle.
Yeah.
So
my only concern there, is hopefully his final game. He's not looking to be the star of the show. I mean, he's not that way inclined. He doesn't.
no.
It's one of those. It's one of those fine margins, right? You want the game to flow, but equally you can't be there telling someone to take your hands off the ball 3-4 times.
Yeah. Exactly. But what's quite interesting, all the referees in TMO are all English. So, they have quite a policy of working as teams and as units.
Hopefully they don't listen to this podcast.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm hoping.
What? You suffers. We'll show you.
Yeah, exactly.
Kick off. Penalty.
Take it. Mike Tyndall might have a yawn.
Oh, God, isn't he a whinger?
Jesus, mate.
He claims like South Africa played the most boring rugby. I'm not sure if he's looked at the 2003 final. or their whole tournament for that matter. Don't get me wrong, they were a great team. They were for 18 months leading in. Jesus, he does love a whinge. But look, let's move swiftly on, mate. I mean, I dare say we'll talk about potential lineups. We'll obviously be speculating here. We'll be doing what no man has ever done before, and that's looking to the mercurial brain of Rassie Erasmus and trying to predict what's in his mind. But if we touch on New Zealand really quickly, because I think much like the Argentine game, it should be relatively straightforward in terms of lineups. I think we've both agreed, and what we've said there earlier is Retallick will likely start ahead of Whitelock, with Whitelock on the bench, but I can't see any further changes. Can you?
No, the key questions for them are probably the bench. Will they go with a 6-2 split? Don't be surprised if I wouldn't be surprised if they do. I mean, unlikely, but something they're probably discussing and thinking about, especially after what happened in Twickenham. And the other thing is who actually their reserve props. You've got a few. Ofa Tuafanasi is a great prop. He's been around a long time, but he seems to have lost a bit of favour since Jason Ryan's come in there. Don't know if that's a South Island, North Island, Canterbury, Auckland thing. But they've backed their young props. It'll be interesting to see if they still back the young props in a final. That's going to be an arm wrestle. So that's just the other one I'd be looking. But I mean, as much as I've given them grief for the last while, they didn't know who their best 15 was. They do seem to have settled on things a bit more. And Mark Talia thinks, I don't know what his indiscretion still was, why he got booted out of the team. But he's there. But
something to do with strip clubs. I'm not quite sure what that is. But
what's it?
But maybe potentially a strip club. Yeah, just overstaying his welcome.
There you go. So,
lead.
Yeah, I heard Artie Severe just had to escort him up the stairs as well. So, listen, we'll see. But that's about it. I mean, I think Anton Leonard-Brown's probably cemented himself on the bench because he's one of those defensive safeties and a few things. But it'll be interesting to see if they go with Damien McKenzie. Because if it is a tight game, he's the kind of guy that could expose some of our slow forwards. But also, well, I love the guy and I'd select him, but he could also do something a bit funny under pressure. But let's see.
Well, South Africa, mate. I mean, for me, I mean, I guess another backbone of the team over the last 5 or 6 years, and man of the match in the 2019 World Cup. Dwayne Vermeulen, for me, he seemed to play a very calm game, still had an influence against France, but I just really didn't see much against England, mate. And when you've got a rampaging bull like Jasper Wiese, who's primed 2 weeks rest, ready to pump those legs straight into, the All Blacks, you've got to start him. I dare say you have to start him, and I'm not even sure. It'll be interesting. I'm very confident that South Africa will be 6-2. I'm not sure what your thoughts are, and so I think then Dwayne has to be on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
But I dare say, if he can manage 20, 30 minutes for his final final time wearing the green and gold, but I just think the poor bloke looks like he's on his last legs. What a servant to the box.
Yeah.
But he's just not influencing the breakdown like he used to, and he just looks a little bit tired. And considering that we have to start well, we have to have that energy from minute one. We cannot have the Mount Smart going down 2 tries and having to find our way back into this game. I think we need Jasper Wiese. I think.
I mean, if you think
imagine them two having a child. 6'9", 300 kilos, runs the 111 seconds. Good lord. De Klerk to come in to start, mate. I can't see them starting with Quibus, Reiner.
Yeah. Listen, well, 2 steps back before we maybe get into the weeds of it too much. I don't know how the Boks are going to play. The mind game started straight after the final whistle against England, when in the post-game interview, they asked Jacques Nienaber, and he just said, well, you got to score 34 points to beat the All Blacks.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, we're going to go that route. So, listen, from a rugby purist perspective, and a South African who lives in New Zealand, who loves both of these teams, this is the best game in the world for me. The All Blacks versus South Africa is always the pinnacle of rugby.
Greatest rivalry in the game, right?
Greatest rivalry. But it's a final. It's everything. I think it's still going to hear a bit of good versus evil, the way the All Blacks play versus the Springboks, which I think is a misnomer, but the press love it. So, but the other thing is, there's also 2 coaches who actually, this is their last games in charge of their national teams.
Yeah.
And it's 3 apiece across them. So they've each got 3. They've only played twice this year. The Boks got a toweling in Mount Smart, and then they gave them a toweling at Twickenham. I'm going to be honest with you, I wouldn't read into either of those games anything. So South Africa just played a lot of the Japanese-based guys here in Auckland, and they just weren't sharp. They weren't better already. They weren't up to it. And that was Faf, it was Peter Steph Tutoy, it was Damien Delende. Those boys are all sharp and ready now. In Twickenham, I touched on earlier, Retallick wasn't playing, but also over and above that, I just think they
said they jumped off the plane a few days ago, right?
Yeah.
But again, I think the one thing to take from Mount Smart, I think the one thing to take from Mount Smart is how important it is for us to either have parity.
Yeah,
or be ahead early in the game, because New Zealand have a better. Whilst we've got probably our most lethal back 3 that we've maybe ever had, and we saw that against France, how we can have a quick turnover ball, do a bit of a New Zealand and score tries out of nowhere. They're the kings at the sucker punch, as Sexton
but also
said.
You don't want to play catch-up rugby against them.
No,
I said it, and I said it last week. Is you can't let them get in the front, because they just suck up the oxygen out of you. And so no starting, and this is so now getting into the detail a bit of it. Like, it's not just the starting. The one other thing is also that the All Blacks are just so good at converting. Taking the opportunities, but converting pressure into points.
Yeah.
So, it's become quite a telling thing suddenly with all the commentators during the games, but they talk about the red zone attack or entries. So New Zealand have the most entries of any team in the World Cup into the 22. They average 12.7 entries. And of that, they're the number 1 ranked team for the amount of times they get points in that. They get 3.89 points, call it 4 points, every time they get into the 22. Like, that's an unbelievably good conversion rate. It says a lot, though, what I was touched on earlier about they haven't been tested and they've had a pretty weak run.
Yeah.
But where the Boks are quite different. They only have like 2.5 points of entry, and they're only doing about 9 a game. So they're very different styles in a way. But the thing is that the differences, and you've touched on it with the back 3 and a few things, the Boks can score from anywhere now.
Yeah.
So coming to the selections, you never choose anyone in isolation. Everyone is selected according to the overall plan and the strategy.
Yeah.
I can't tell you if we're going to go 6-2 and just try and muscle them and kick points and do all the stuff that All Blacks accuse us of doing, or if we're going to do what we did in 2019 and actually play an expensive game and score some points and then back our defence. Either way, I think we have to start strong, but we have to finish stronger and shut the All Blacks down.
And I think that's why, just given we touched on it earlier. With New Zealand, we would have played the top 6 teams in the world in this World Cup. And a brutal Tonga.
Yep.
So, given, I just think the fact that we're looking at 2 schools of thought. Are New Zealand potentially slightly undercooked? 2, have South Africa had, won too many big games, and have they got enough in the legs? So, for me, I'm probably more worried about South Africa. Just because I do think, that was my concern going into the World Cup, is whether we had enough, and I think I had them going out as you did in the quarterfinals.
Yeah,
we played great, I thought, against France. We really seemed to not only Eben, but Sia, the front 3, they all seem to sort of be way off the pace. So, can that be countered, and can we bounce back? I'm sure we can, but I think we need that extra man on the bench for the forward pack. We think about the impact of a Kwaka Smith and a Dion Fourie off the bench. They've been electric and been a real positive point for us, coming off the bench, changing the games, really. We saw what Kwaka did in their quarterfinals. We really upped the tempo there for the semis.
Arceus Neyman last week with
Ox. So, man, I love those skills.
We're going to have the front row there. But then it's a question of, the other guys who comes off. Franco Mostert had got taken off against France earlier and he was upset. Yeah. And he rewarded the coaches this week by leading the tackle count with 18 tackles. So, maybe Eben, we hope a bit of the same this week. He came off early. He was a bit, maybe he puts a shift in. But it'll be interesting because I do think the key one. So let's talk about the key battles, and then maybe that also help with some selection. But there's a few key things in this game for me. I still think the scrum we will talk about, but I think it'll be evenly contested because the All Blacks have got some good scrummages and they've got a really good scrum coach. The line-out, though, has been actually a bit of a problem for the Springboks, but the All Blacks have been exceptional. Yeah, they've only lost 2 line-outs the entire World Cup, 98% success rate. But it's going to be interesting to see how they go against the Book line-out. So the Book line-out defensively is very strong.
Very strong, yeah.
And it's because we run a block system. So we've got tall timber, and we only compete at the back, and we give the opposition the front. The reason we do that is we want them to play off the front, because if they try more, we'll just squash them or sack it. But more importantly, it allows our big loose forwards at the back of the line-out to lead that rush defence, and we can get right on top of teams. So if you play to the front, you start feeding the Book defensive system. So as good as the All Black line-out's been, it's going to get tested this week. Yeah. And it also makes me wonder if maybe Jean Klein then comes in. He hasn't played a lot recently, but he's been really good on the defensive line-out. It also means Dwayne's maybe there because he's really good defensive line-out. But I agree with you, Jasper Visser is he's just a bulldog, man. He just wants to get stuck in.
He's got 50 minutes in his legs, ready and raring to go. And if he can empty the tank and set things up where, it's interesting, we played so many fetches against Ireland. So again, what's the tactics, as you said, and how what's our style and our route to victory?
The biggest thing against New Zealand is you can't let them get. They call it lightning quick ball. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's what they live and breathe on.
That's what I'm saying. Faf's got to be all over Aaron Smith. He's got to have an absolute
but also
stormer.
You need Dion Fourie. You need Kwaka. You need maybe Eskom comes in. I don't know. Whoever. To just be an extra body in rucks, trying to slow the ball down, just being a nuisance, just giving you a second or two. And I know that, game of inches, 1 or 2 seconds or how you stop these guys. 100%. So, got to be interesting. The other thing, though, is England showed a blueprint of how to actually beat the Boks. And the key And where South Africa's actually been getting unstuck against the All Blacks lately is the aerial battle or the kicking
Well, that
game.
Mount Smart game, they gave us some of our own medicine, wasn't it? Because
Yeah.
we were doing a lot of the up and unders, and we really struggled to defend those.
We are, and the All Blacks actually have made the second most kicks out of any team in the whole World Cup, and they average 30 kicks a game. So we've got to be up. We've got to be winning that aerial battle. And the guy maybe's got to keep an eye on, and maybe he's just got to prove it, or the coaches will have faith in him. But I thought Kurtley Orange had a bit of a mare. But credit to England, he hasn't made his debut that long ago. They put him under pressure, and they were different kicks. So let's just see how they go. But you're going against both Talia and Jordan are really good in the air.
Yeah.
So yeah.
See, I think Orange is good on the attacking side, right? It's a different perspective when you're on your heels, and guys are running at you,
and it's potentially going to be wet again.
Well, I was about to say, so it's going to be interesting to see how South Africa are going to get 34 points against what is a better team in New Zealand, as per Ninaba's statement, where we just scraped 16 against England. So it's going to be interesting to see how we play. If the ball's going to be in hand a fair bit more, because there were so many knock-ons, we looked very scrappy, and again the energy levels weren't there. So what Rassie's got up his sleeve, I'm sure he'll have something like that famous 2019 final maul, which was just a bit of absolute genius. Between the line out, the backs taking the ball up to Dwayne Vermeulen, setting up that ball, which led to a nice little penalty straight in front of poles. There's got to be something there for us. Equally, I'm sure Schmidt's got something in store for the ABs, mate.
Yep. No, they will. I'm hoping we see some cool trick plays. Everyone underplays their hand until a final, and then you gotta bring out all the tricks. We saw one last week from the Springboks where they threw the ball in the line out to the back right on the 15, and then actually played it to Kurtley Orange, so looking for the mismatches going past the fat boys. And it worked, except our fat boys were too slow and we got a turnover. So hopefully we see a few more. And New Zealand won in 2011 with a trick play, and bloody Tony Woodcock, all people, scoring the teabag try.
Yeah.
So hopefully we see that. I definitely think, though, you've nailed it there. Joe Schmidt's going to have a plan for the book defensive system or something on how to do something. So that's going to be interesting. I suspect it might be that change of direction play with the three forwards. So you'll see three forwards set up one way really late. They're going to swing around the other way, swap positions, and just keep the big Springbok defenders working hard around the corners like that.
Yeah.
So let's see what they do, and we'll go from there. But listen, I still think, call me old-fashioned, call it cliched, it's got to come down to defence in a final. Defence wins championships.
How many 3 World Cups, 3 wins, 0 tries conceded for South Africa? I dare say that will come to an end, unfortunately, in some shape or form. New Zealand are going to score at least 1 try. How many they score, hopefully not too many more than that. But, it'll be an incredible record that ultimately comes to an end. I mean, to play 3 games and not concede 1 try, when I think about, those defences against England twice, on the line for 5-6 minutes, just absolutely amazing bravery, courage, just to hang in there. Yeah. And ultimately that, those have proved, critical in winning those games.
It is, and it's really interesting. The Springboks have latched onto the saying from Dricus du Plessis, the MMA fighter, which says, "Hulle weet nie wat ons weet." So for our non-Afrikaans people, it means they don't know what we know, and it captures what the Springbok team means so well. And I've been seeing so many of these clips and these videos this week, and I've just loved it so much. I mean, like, you even sent me that one where there's the guy picking up and scrumming the couch.
It's brilliant. I mean, it looks like it's obviously the fellas in a township, the 2 ladies, one lady's holding a baby.
Mate, and that's
you
what
see the
people
lad,
just
you see the young lad, his mother's like consoling him and he's drinking some
sugar
water.
water. Like,
Must be about 6 or 7, looks like he's having a panic attack.
mate, and that's what people struggle to understand. But it's also like, and this is one of the things that really gets my back up. Like a lot of these people talking, oh, we can't have the scrum or we can't have these things. You know, it's really easy to say that when you come from a privileged position. But when you come from a place like South Africa, where people don't have access to a field, they don't have access to a ball, we don't learn skills, it's not part of the RP, it's not part of a lot of those things. But what we know how to do is to just stay in the fight, and we can push and we can tackle. And the Springboks are building a world-dominating team on the back of that, and I just love it. And I hope on Saturday that's what happens. The number one thing, I genuinely hope this is going to be the best game of rugby played, and we talk about this when we are very old and remember it. We're not talking about any of the negatives so far that there could.
Hopefully whoever loses just takes on the chin. It'll be tough. It's going to be. I think you spoke about the occasion to me offline. Both teams is going to be the 10th World Cup. Both have won 3 each, so ultimately one will have 4 and. Both teams will make up.
This is it.
So it's going to be huge. The biggest rivalry, 95.
Yeah, and as much as I loved McCall, and everyone who knows me knows what a big fan I was of McCall. He was the first ever guy to lift back to back. I would love to see him lift it back to back.
Be a beautiful thing. I mean, sort of. Finalising our thoughts, mate. I mean, I know we probably didn't speak a huge amount about the teams, but I could definitely see Pollard starting ahead of Lubbock, especially when we consider the rain will still be there.
Maybe, but remember, they proved they're not scared to pull Lubbock early. So if they want to try score points, they want to try get ahead, you might still start him.
I think maybe getting a clearer idea what the conditions are going to be.
Closer to the time.
Apparently it's going to rain morning and then sort of maybe in between or after the game. So it should be interesting to see what happens. It's going to be emotional one way or another, mate. It's going to be emotional.
It is going.
It's going to be a glass cage of emotion.
It's
any final thoughts, mate, on how this ultimately ends up? Scoreline, winners. What do you think, mate? We both didn't have South Africa going.
Well, mate,
all the
to
way.
be fair, yep, I had New Zealand making the final and losing to France. But what I saw I genuinely never thought South Africa would beat France, because I thought they'd nullify a pack, and they did it. But man, we went back to our ancestors. Here they talk about going back to and going to the well. The South Africans, we've been going into the mine, mate, and we've been digging deep, and where we know where there's pressure and there's precious metals, and we've been digging up some jewels the last few weeks.
Accessing some African witch doctors and some beautiful juju rubbing that.
Pulling out some diamonds, I'm telling you. And I genuinely really hope they can do it again. I'm very worried though, because I think our boys will have a feeling it a lot more. The last, as you said, playing the top 6 teams pretty much in a row is tough. But if I have to make a call, I'm going to go the box by 1 point. Just keep it consistent.
Wouldn't that be a stat?
Consistent.
Wouldn't that be a stat?
Yeah.
Winning all 3 playoff games by 1 point.
1 point. Because you have to go dig out those diamonds, mate.
Oh, it'd be great to see another overinflated Tom Brady video at the end with the congratulations.
Oh, mate, it's that American private equity money, I'm telling you.
Exactly, mate. It makes you high as a kite. But I think that's, mate, I dare say.
What's your call, mate? What's your call?
I think New Zealand are favourites. I've just got to believe deep down in my heart that South Africa have 40, 50 minutes in it for the guys that are going to start, especially in the forward pack. Thinking about a Diolande, for instance. I mean, he's got through plenty of work. He's plenty active at the breakdown, and the like. I've just got to hope that all those boys have got one more big game in them.
Yep.
But I do think New Zealand are favourites. So, yeah, whatever that means, mate. Fingers crossed South Africa can do it one more time. I just really hope that they can really get up for it energy-wise, because what we want to see is, we want to see another quarter-final type intensity. We want to see another South Africa, South Africa, Ireland type level game, just so that the final ends on a high.
Yep. We want to see what rugby's all about. We want to see a contest.
Absolutely, mate. I think that wraps it up. What we will do, just for anyone listening, and thank you for everyone listening, please like, subscribe, add a cheeky comment if that's what you're into, is we will have a post-World Cup debrief, talking about highs and lows, highlights and lowlights of the World Cup. And then maybe a couple of podcasts from there in terms of the future of certain countries and rugby. But for now, thank you everyone for listening. Strap in for the final two, Dwight. Thanks for joining me, mate. And even though we've got maybe a couple of Kiwi listeners, fingers crossed the Boks can get one more DuPont win.
I would love it. Only thing I got to say is, Ikumri Boka.
Cheers, everyone.